All right, so it is 5:37. We'll call the meeting to order. Are there any changes that we need to make to the printed agenda?
I don't think so.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Approved. Motion to approve.
Made by Kim. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Danny. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and it is approved unanimously. Now for the minutes, review any proposed changes to the minutes that Shannon worked so hard to transcribe for us.
That was such a long time ago, wasn't it?
It was the wee early days of the summer.
When we thought we were coming out of COVID.
Yeah. No, they look good. You did a great job, Shannon, capturing all that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So all those in, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved for both May 20th and June 9th. And now we are to the exciting part of the agenda, the performance venue feasibility discussion. And I do believe that is why we have Miss Katie Murray with us.
Yes, I invited Katie tonight just because I know that her organization has already looked at this a little bit, and I don't want us to work against each other. So I wanted to kind of hear from her what they've done thus far, what they're thinking, what their vision is, and see how we can align what this board wants to do with that.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is a really exciting thing to talk about, so I'm happy to be here. So I'm just going to give you kind of like some background info and then where we are right now. Background info, back a couple years after I started, which was 5 years ago, we did a lot of research, listening sessions to kind of figure out what the gaps are in the creative community of Orange County. And physical space for the arts is a major need. And it varies somewhat town to town, but overall, that we really lack places to take a class. There was no studio space for artists. In Hillsborough, we've got a great visual arts scene, but we do not have the greatest performing arts spaces. We've got bars, but bars aren't the best fit for everybody. We've got awesome outdoor green spaces, but again, that limits what you can do. So we started figuring out how to address the space issues and formed a great relationship with the owners of the Eno Mill, which is Frank Gaylor and his company called Hedgehog Holdings. They are based out of Raleigh. They are a historic preservation company that purchases old mills and restores them. So they're also major arts advocates and supporters. And so we really just connected from the get-go and have been partners in this. So, we opened up the first artist studios back right before the pandemic. And even, in spite of the pandemic, those have proven to be successful. We, even turned a little bit of a profit in the first year, which I was, surprised and happy about. So then in May, I got approval from the county commissioners to open a new 7,000 square foot space, which we are opening officially to the public on October 1st, next Friday. I hope you guys have gotten invites to that. If not, I will make sure you do. So this space is 5 additional studios. Art Therapy Institute is opening a Hillsborough office in this space. We have a 1,000 square foot gallery and a 1,000 square foot large classroom. So, you know, we're slowly but surely starting to kind of check some of these boxes and offer spaces for the general public to participate in the arts. A performing arts venue has been a topic of conversation since I've been here. And I know that, you know, I know the backstory about the group that had researched it years ago and the group that was trying to get Witted turned into a venue, which would have been incredible. So I do know I know about that background. As of right now, the extent of the conversations that I have had with Frank are, this would be awesome to do. How do we make it happen? And so that's where we are, basically. Frank is all about it. He's got ideas for locations in the mill that would be a great venue. I have my own opinions on what the needs of those venues of that venue would be. You know, we don't need anything huge. We could not sustain something huge. But I think probably somewhere in the 200 to 300 seat range would be ideal for our community, and it would allow us flexibility. It also, you know, if we could have a space upfitted correctly, it would lend itself to theater and dance, not just live music. So it would fill a lot of needs that we have, because even performing space is at a premium here. We've got the venues at UNC, but they are not accessible to the outside community at all. They're not even really accessible to some of the UNC student groups that need space to do what they do. And I don't think it's mainly just because space is at a premium everywhere here. So what I do know is there's an organization based out of Minneapolis called ArtSpace. And what they do is help organizations figure out what types of space are most ideal for their needs of the community, especially if they're old historic spaces. So I had talked to ArtSpace back in 2019. I even visited them when I was in Minneapolis for Americans for the Arts conference. And at that time in 2019, they had quoted me a price of $10,000 to do a modified feasibility study. It was modified because we had already done all the research. We spent 2 years data gathering, which is a big chunk of what they typically do. Since we had already done that and had a really firm grasp on the needs of the community, they were doing a modified plan, which would be figuring out a sustainability plan, I think a 5-year operating budget, looking at similar models from around the country so that we can, you know, use best practices. I really respect them, and I think a feasibility study is the smart way to go. And there could very well be other people out there that do that same service, but I would feel really good about going with ArtSpace to do something like this. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Katie, what year when did you say that was?
2019.
And can you tell us why you didn't move forward? Was it not funded?
No, we didn't move forward at that time because I didn't have to. You know, I got approval from the commissioners to move into these new studios. And I kind of put it on the back burner. The way I presented the plan back in February of 2020, it was in October of 2019 when the first studios got approved. We were going to move into the first studios. That was phase 1. Phase 2 was going to be, you know, basically what our new space is, a gallery space and a classroom. Phase 3 would be everything else, performance space, these larger scale projects. And before we embarked on that, we would need to do a feasibility study with art space. So that all was in the proposal, and it's just, we just haven't gotten there yet. But if the town is, I've also kind of thought, I've kind of wondered, am I like going at this alone? Because that's a big factor in this too. I've got limited bandwidth, limited resources, and especially a performing arts space is so, it needs to be created with the greater community, that until I felt like it was, a priority for the town, I kind of was just waiting.
Does anyone from the TDA want to comment on that?
So I just pulled out we had a committee, Katie, I know we sat down and talked about this a few years ago, but it's between the WITted committee and you. Okay, so between there was a committee of people who were really interested in performing art space, and they included like Stephen Burke and Francesca Talenti, some UNC representation, some behind the scenes, other corporate entities who said, keep me posted. We're really into this. We want to help. And also, I'm trying to think of his name, the guy who did the Saxe-Baha renovation. He was really involved and was really interested, especially if there was a place to do warehouse renovation.
Right.
So at that time, we met with Frank as well, and they showed us the space they wanted the Performing Arts Center to go into. And it was really difficult because there's not really good road frontage for that. There's not really good parking for that. Like, there's a lot of obstacles in the way. And so we moved away from looking at that. He was also a little bit expensive. And had we been able to move forward, what would have happened is we would have gone into the Nugget. We were very close to moving towards the Nugget space. And then we got blocked by the leaseholders of the gravel parking lot there at Hillsborough Barbecue. They were kind of, wanting to, mess around with the dollars and cents there for the parking access. And then not long after that, Sarah left and I moved into this role, and I didn't have time to continue to lead this committee. So I guess I'm just wondering, I think it seemed like your closing statement there is you're interested in to know if the town's involved or to what extent. My understanding, and Matt can speak to this, there has been a long time interest in putting this over at the train station that I thought was coming by now. So, I know that the town has been interested, and I know the community is interested. You've got someone like Orange Community Players who has done an exceptional job for 15 years and is probably our most stable nonprofit in the area in terms of people tourism board has worked with. I'm not talking about arts commissions. I'm talking about not government agencies, but individual situations. But, I think the collaboration, that there's a lot of people interested in that collaboration. A lot of people would be revived to get back involved. And I think what we saw last summer was, an opportunity to kind of move away from some portable stage that moved around outdoors. And instead, one of the things we ran into with our committee was somebody has to do some drawings and some visual, you have to have that visual piece. You have to have something to put in front of investors and, with which to raise the money. And those things cost money. Especially, so like we looked at that Nugget space, we looked at it as flex with some classroom upstairs. And, we had this big vision for how that could be converted into performance space with classroom. And then where's the money to pay for that drawing? Where's, for engineering, all of that. And so I think that's what you guys jump in if you disagree, but I sort of think we were looking at how can we get that vision to its next place. So like if there is a space to me, if we can identify a space, we can move forward with paying to have those renderings done and start fundraising. But
Well,
that's
and
just,
I should say too, that I'm not, I am, there could be other spaces that would be more ideal than the mill. I think the mill would be really cool, especially, in the kind of the spirit of the Hall River Ballroom type feel,
yep.
but I know there's been many other locations discussed, and maybe that is a starting point too. Maybe we need a feasibility study that is going to examine multiple locations. That's obviously going to cost more money, but if we're not certain of where we want this thing to happen, then maybe that's something that we need to look at.
I mean, I hear a lot, I hear you. I know Frank, at the time we spoke with him a few years ago, was, that was his dream always for that mill space, was for it to be an arts haven. Shannon, before, this was 2017, 2016, 2017, we were really looking at that. And Margaret at the time said we would never be able to get enough parking approved there. Is that still the case? For a theater for 200 seats?
I don't know what's in there. I mean, at the time, I think the cloth mill was there, the school was there and
It
talking
was.
about expanding, but I don't know that that's still happening. I think we just have to look at what's in that building, who's using the parking and at what times, because what we don't want to happen is the school has an event the same night that there's a big play, a sold out play, the same night that there's a 200 person wedding at Cloth Mill, and people are parking up and down Dimmock's Mill Road.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the concern, is like, if we were to locate something like that there, all the tenants would have to play pretty nice together. We'd have to have some kind of a shared parking agreement, and probably parking would need to be expanded on the site, because I just don't think that there's going to be enough parking for all the activity that's going on out there. And that's a guess. I don't even have a parking count. I think a lot of that parking out there is unstructured gravel.
So you see spending the money as let's say the modified $10,000 for a modified feasibility study. And from that, you get some idea of how best to put this together so that it's sustainable in a 5-year budget. And is there anything else you get from that?
I am happy to forward you guys the proposal if you'd like me to send that.
Yeah, I would. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, and just keeping in mind this is old.
Sure.
And of course, we also could have another conversation with Art Space to kind of explain where we are now.
Yeah, I think that would be worth having.
I have a copy of the strategic business plan from 2011 for use of the Whitted building. Would that be helpful?
It might be. See what the plan was at Whitted.
Yeah.
Who did that plan?
See, Orange County Cultural Center. They may have done it with their committee.
It might be helpful at least to have to show a consultant, like, hey, we've been looking at this for 10 years. Here's everything that's been explored.
Yeah.
For sure. We have the bylaws from the Performing Arts Center nonprofit that we were forming, and there might be, so there could be some things in there too.
I mean, I would like to have also somebody look, at our region and tell us, like, your community and the surrounding areas can support a 250 seat theater, or they may say, between Hall River Ballroom and, some of the other smaller live music venues that we have around here, they may say, I don't know. And then that's another conversation we need to have.
Well, Well, I think part of that conversation is who would be using it and for what, because some of these groups that we're talking about are never going to go to Haw River. They're never going to go to the art center.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I
I
agree
think
with that.
defining who our target customer is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have still, I mean, I know it's now been about 3 years since we did all of our research, but and our climate has changed a little bit in some areas, but it hasn't in others. And so performing arts is definitely one of the areas that it really hasn't changed all that much. There still is a lack of space for local theater and dance, and things like we have like 4 or 5 different choral nonprofit organizations in Orange County that are, I mean, they've been around a long time, and they're very well run, and they don't have anywhere to perform. So it still is a need. And then you also just have, musical groups that could play at this venue en route, when they're doing the circuit. So, I mean, I feel like it would be heavily used, but it's I would like somebody to really study it and be able to tell us that for sure.
Can I ask a rookie question that, you guys who have worked a lot harder on this would know this. Why do we not consider local schools as an opportunity for these kinds of sites? What are the obstacles to that?
So Orange Community Players has used Orange High School for the most part, occasionally dipped over to Stanford or Cedar Ridge.
Sure.
But it is a process. It is, there is an expense. It's not, it's not free by any chance. So whoever is getting ready to do performances knows they're paying for the space no matter where they go. But the access is different and difficult through the school system, and usually takes an inside connection in order to get it done. So, you have to pay for the custodian to be there the entire time you're there. And it's just, you can only be there the 2 weeks. So somebody, if you've got, like I'm using Orange Community Players as an example, but they've got to find somewhere else for the rest of the summer to practice and get ready. And then they move in and do a week, rehearsal, and then go into the show and then get out. And it's real, and there's nowhere for them to store. I mean, I think you're looking at something that if you could get a couple of key players like Orange Community Players, and maybe, I don't know the choral groups at all, but I know Faulkner's and To the Point and all of these people, could really utilize that space in a much better way. And maybe even to include some costume storage. So, the shared costuming and props and things
set
like that.
building, if we had set building space, that would be so
set
awesome.
building is a big deal too. We have been inside witted building sets and practicing at night because that's where we could find access, which was great. It's just weird.
Yeah. The other thing is that 2-week load-in time, because in a school auditorium, they maybe are not able to, just give over the space for a 2-week load-in,
right,
plus the runtime of the show.
Yeah, excellent point. That is a summer show. So you can't do anything. The other 3 shows they do a year, they got to figure something else out. Where are they going? Because you can't do that while school's in session.
Right.
Yeah. So the school, a group like Orange Community Players is pretty much outgrown. They could be doing so much more if there was a facility that they could utilize on a regular basis. And then I know from personal experience, groups like Faulkner's were paying for Page Auditorium, Lord knows how much, to hold their annual recitals there. I'm sure To the Point does the same thing. You've got some people right here who are looking for performance space. I don't think we really seriously considered it as a music, maybe to your point, Katie, it's a big music group that, you can really charge the ticketing that you would need in order to pay for the rental of that. But I mean,
thinking of some of
I
the
wouldn't be
shows.
looking at small locals running through there.
I'm just thinking about some of the shows of that scale that were at the Big Barn many years ago,
Yeah,
before you could drink, Matt.
yeah.
Yeah, and it was great fun, and it was, yeah. I wonder if there's value now. I just feel like you're a gold mine, Kim, and you, Katie, of all the stuff the work that you've done before, and each of us has a piece of the community, as do all the people you mentioned. I wondered if there's value of starting a collaborative document just to start to collect all this information and like down and dirty, like to the point. What are they using now? How often do they use it? What are they paying for it? What does their calendar look like? I feel like we could fill out a calendar pretty quickly with moneymakers.
Mhm.
So could you reseat a committee that's more than just you, Katie, to do some of that legwork? So it didn't all come to you and became more inclusive of the Hillsborough and the people, businesses here. And so it's not just Orange County focused. Is that
Oh,
something?
absolutely.
Is
I mean,
that
I don't think
would do?
anything we've done's been, I mean, I happen to work for Orange County, but this is not, solely Orange County focused in any way. So yeah, absolutely. I would have to do that. I mean, I both for capacity reasons, but also because, we got to have the input of the greater arts community to make an educated decision on this. So
Their support too.
yeah. And I also met with Orange community players back, it was before the pandemic. And I for a long time, and I will at some point start a children's theater program at the Mill that is a partnership with our Title I schools. It's, this is something I've had in the works for a long time. I just haven't had the bandwidth to take it on, but I was talking about partnering on a space with them because, both groups need rehearsal space. Both groups need set building and costume space. And there's a lot of shared opportunity there. So I would love to get a group back together. What is our ideal time frame for something like that?
I mean, I would think the sooner the better. This has gone on for a really long time. I'll make mention real quickly that there's also Kelly Durfee with Orange Community Players just started a children's backyard theater group, and she would love to be a part of this too. There are probably people who've been involved in the past who would wish to be re-involved. I was just looking through this folder. There's a lot more documents here than I had remembered. We did have Summit do some drawings for the Nugget space. There is a budget from one of the other approaches that were taken. And you said there's a lot of information here that I would like us to pull together before we went to a feasibility study somewhere, especially somewhere out of state and not boots on the ground here.
Yeah, I'd want to have a whole lot of work done before, and I think that they would add a lot of value in, the nuts and bolts money work that I would rather have somebody else do.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of collecting our assets and both in terms of people and information, I don't think we need a committee to even start collecting that stuff now and dumping it all together and just start building on it. That doesn't even cost anything, right?
No, that costs us nothing. It might take a minute. Like I was just thinking, if I took all this out on the conference room table and Katie brought her stuff and we just sort of culled what we had, like what she's learned since I stopped working on it. She's probably got some things that are more current. I'm thirsty. Oh, hang on. That's my 5-year-old grandson who's thirsty.
I mean, I haven't worked on this since pre-pandemic, so it's been a minute.
Sorry about that. So yeah, everything's a little dated. We had collected like the price per square foot, done some comparisons and things like that you might find interesting. There's quite a bit here. And we could. So Danny, you said don't form a committee to work on this?
Oh, no, I said, go ahead.
Okay.
I personally can't participate in a committee at this point, but I would be
Right.
happy to, if it seemed like helpful, I'd be happy to host a Google Doc and start collecting
Okay,
data and links to, the work that you already have, and
okay. We could
just kind of
scan in what we
pointers to
have
stuff.
and, yeah,
Yeah, and just collecting names, even of just what everybody's got, so that it's a repository all in one place. And yeah, I think it would be, if there are enough people interested in taking it on without drowning.
yeah.
Maybe we just don't call it a committee, because that word scares the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's
it's
a
an interim
project.
preliminary work group.
Committees are where good
Yeah, like a work
ideas
group.
move to die. That's what committees are.
It's a project.
Yeah, so an interim work group or something.
Well,
Yes, the key, like, big underlines under interim.
before we landed at the mill, I had put together a art space task force.
Okay.
And I actually had a ton of people participate in this. We met at the library, and it was almost too many people with so many ideas. And we were talking about all types of space, especially working studio space for artists. But similar to what Danny's saying, we had a Google Doc that everybody was contributing to. I maintain a master database of all the arts organizations in the county, so I could easily, pluck out those groups that we need to get this information from. And I'm happy to do that if you think it makes sense for me to do that, or I'm happy to just share it if that needs to come from this group.
Well, it's great that you have that already pulled together. That's fantastic. And I think Danny's right. If we know a little more info about what they spend, what their attendances are, what are their runs, like a survey of some sort of their specific, how they would use this center, classroom space or not, storage space or not, that kind of thing. I just didn't want to put that on you. I mean, if we add somebody else to the committee who's driven on this, and they can access your list and send a survey,
I feel like it actually,
I'm not going to, I will.
I feel like it is part of my job to keep tabs on stuff like this, so
Okay.
I haven't done it in a while. I feel like I need to know this information and have it. And I think, I've got really good relationships too with everybody that is leading most of our primary arts organizations too. So I think that they would be pretty responsive. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that would be very cool, because that would be so helpful in that, overall. What is the project need to, and I could, we could work to get, if you can start a Google Doc collection place, I can upload, the things that we did, and we did have an attorney do the bylaws for forming a nonprofit for the Performance Arts Center. And I don't know if that's still something we want to do, but if there's going to be a committee of some sort or whatever, however this looks, we've already had that done. So it exists with very little, a little bit of, I want to say twerking, and that is not correct.
I think,
No twerking.
let's just say putting some gas in the car and let it out of the driveway.
Please do not put that in the minutes.
I think you mean tweaking.
Yes, tweaking. Just a little bit of tweaking, and we could, apply for a nonprofit, without a whole lot of time or expense, I think, because this has already been done. So, I mean, not suggesting the TDA becomes the nonprofit for the Performing Arts Center, but I would put out there that for the time being, tourism continues to be our area's largest economic driver. So, it's getting people to come to Hillsborough for performing arts would be amazing.
It would.
Could we get any kind of update on the train station while we're on the subject? Is that something anybody at this group knows, or are we allowed to talk about?
Yeah, we're allowed to talk about it. I mean, it's not a secret.
Is it coming?
Can I give you an update and staff report and get you the most up-to-date information while we're in the
Yeah.
meeting?
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's coming.
Okay.
I just want to say I'm really, really super excited about this connection and synergy. And Katie, I'm sorry that our paths haven't crossed before now. And whatever we're doing, like there's some forward motion, and that's awesome. And on the one hand, when you say this is part of my job, I get really excited because it's not part of my job.
Yeah.
And I really want to hope that we can count on our enthusiasm, not making a project for you who didn't ask for this today,
No, I view it as y'all are kind of restoking the fire, and you're right. I mean, this has been talked about far longer than I've been here. So I feel like now, though, I've got the knowledge, and with the mill, I've got the partner that could really actually make this come to fruition. Whereas 3 years ago, I felt like it was still kind of a pie in the sky dream, So, yeah, I'm excited, totally excited. I cannot do anything until this opening is over, which is next Friday. So if y'all are okay with me waiting until 1st of October to get this Google Doc going, and I will share it with you when I do. Yeah, is that okay with everybody?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Great. And I'll forward you the art space stuff from a few years ago.
I'll show you something, Katie. This hangs on my bulletin board at my desk. This is from a Central Carolina Women in Business meeting from 3 years ago. And the speaker had us write down a couple of carrots and put them in there. Performing Arts Center is one of mine. So just want you to know this meeting. I really think this is very important. And I really am excited to work on it. Again, to revive it, however that happens.
I'm just thankful that you guys are excited to talk about this. I wish all the other communities were wanting to have this conversation. So,
have you talked to Mac Jordan at all? From Saks Baja, he's the designer down there.
No, I know Heather Lagarde.
Okay.
And I believe Frank actually knows him or was somehow involved in conversations when.
Yeah, Mac was at the meeting when we met with Frank. Mac was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I could just, poke him because he's his passion is renovating warehouse space, and he was really into this project. So just mention it again and see if he wants to come back. I mean, at the end of the day, Saks Baja and the ballroom are amazing, and not really unlike what we might need. There's some similar needs anyway.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, anything else for me before I let you all proceed?
No, I think that's you've been very helpful, and I've been silent mainly because I'm being educated. I feel like with everything that's going on, but I think if we can, in some ways, get the band back together of people who have been working on this, or being Imagineers on it, we can move forward with some studies and other things. I think that could put us on a good path forward. To really put us on a good path forward to get a performing arts center, and make, I think, also some level setting. I think maybe when some people hear performing arts center, they're going to think we're going to bring DPAC to Hillsborough.
Yes.
Yeah. No, we're going to be way cooler than that.
Performing arts center is going to be a lot. The term alone is going to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so
Yep.
I think during this process, doing some expectation setting
Yeah.
would be good too. So that,
And I think asking people that question, like when you think of that, what's your dream? Like
Yeah.
what do you think about for that? Like what's your, like when I was saying the big barn experiences came into my head of, 20 years ago, seeing the squirrel nut zippers there, or the Berlin Brothers Christmas shows, or the, like what, everybody's got a different vision, even in this small group, of what would I go see? What would I go do there? Who
Yeah.
am I
And running,
affiliated who would perform there? Yeah.
I mean, from a administration perspective, running those types of venues is so different as well. I mean, I used to run a art center that had a 300 seat theater that was really a community theater space, but we also brought in touring music groups and stuff too. And it, I learned a lot with, I've also worked for major big venues and major festivals. And when you're running a small space like that, it can be tricky making the dollars work, because, you're not at the level to bring in these very well-known top bill acts,
Right.
but you also need to, generate enough revenue while keeping ticket prices affordable too. So it can be tricky, but I think, I think that we're at least on the right track to having the conversation.
Thank you for your time, Katie. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thanks for
Thanks,
having me,
Katie.
y'all.
Thank
See you soon.
Is that a kitty?
and I think the other thing is also, I should have said this, is some of the other perspective locations. I think this is something that maybe a feasibility study or some other study could help us with, is determining where's best. I know there's some various conversations about what will we do with the fire station when we get to move it, or there's one other location, or the train station. But I feel like those projects are so far off in the future that we could be waiting a while. So
Some of them are and some of them aren't. I mean, I know I was working with a group that was looking before Habitat moved in there at the Maxway building. And so I think, I can hear in Katie's voice, she's really excited about the idea of it being based at the mill, and that's a fabulous idea. But I think there are also many other ideas out there that we should be capturing and just start comparing, like in a spreadsheet. What does it have? What does it not have? What are the benefits? What do we look? What's the criteria we want? To your point, Matt, I think there's some really interesting and unique places we should be looking at.
Yeah. I think the real problem, I mean, again, if you've got a real problem with frontage and, it's not easy to navigate the mill. So if you're trying to bring in a lot of people who aren't familiar, it's tough enough to get somebody into a cloth mill event. I've done it a few times. It's difficult. So I think that we do need to be open to other areas. I love the idea of art centric. I went to see the Van Gogh exhibit in Charlotte, which is basically that whole mill complex is arts and food and bars and, and big warehouse space devoted to exhibits and whatever. Very cool. But also a nice big parking space and lots of road frontage. So I knew where in the mill I was headed. So
I think that's an important point, Kim, when we get to dropping in our criteria, parking, frontage, blah, 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 whatever those are. I think an important one to consider is proximity to food and beverage and lodging, right? So it may not be that it works out that way because the perfect space is not next to the bars and restaurants or whatever, but I think it should be an important criteria to be weighed.
Well, in a perfect world, it'd be the fire station playhouse. I mean, how cool is that name, right?
Yeah, unless there's a show on the day of the parade or the
Yeah.
And then there goes our parking, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for bringing her in. That was great.
Oh, good stuff. Really good stuff. Yeah.
It certainly was. And next on our agenda are our projects list for FY 2022.
So I just wanted to review this. I think I captured everything we talked about in the retreat. I tried to, but I wanted to make sure there was a lot of discussion and a lot of kind of like weaving in and out of topics. And we had a lot of concise, good discussion, but there was also a lot of it. So I just wanted to make sure that you all felt like this list kind of captured what you were thinking coming out of that meeting. And I can, one second.
Yes. Uh-oh. There you go.
And I'll just be totally transparent. I haven't completed any of your short-term items yet because of the transition here at the town, and currently short-staffed, but both of those things are panning out a little bit better. So I think the low-hanging fruit is probably going to be, the RAC card and trying to work with the lodging partners. I mean, there's some of this stuff can get done within a matter of a week or two, and some of it's going to take a little bit longer, but I think for the short-term stuff, we can accomplish all of that stuff probably in this fiscal year with our existing budget. Then the long-term stuff, I think we can start this year, but it may kind of bleed into FY23 and maybe beyond. I mean, I don't know. The performing arts venue, like we've been having that conversation for 10 years. So hopefully not another 10 years from now, but if we get it started now, I'd like to see us make significant progress by this time next year.
I think everything you captured, and obviously that long term is going to extend maybe even into 2024, maybe not, maybe so, but I think you did capture everything we talked about. So
Is the were we going to do the short-term rentals Airbnb in a separate piece than the hotels, because that looks like, or were we just going to incorporate them in as other options?
I was going to do it as its own standalone RAC card, unless you want me to do it another way, just because there's already kind of a lack of space on that existing one, unless I do a front and back, but I'm nervous if I do a front and back, people will only see or display one side. But it's up to you guys, however you want it done.
And then on the RAC cards, which obviously, around town, but I was through the airport recently and there's nothing about Hillsborough out at the airport. And I just wondered if we pursue that, or is that through the visitor? That's probably a sidebar question, which we can circle back to, but.
Yeah, and let's circle back around that, because we are supposed to have materials at the airport.
Okay.
I think we pay to have that. So I'll check into that.
Okay.
And also and this only came to mind literally as I was driving through, coming back from Richmond over the weekend. I wish we had a better visitor center in North Carolina as people come over through Virginia, because Virginia's going in is so beautiful, so large. But is it possible for us to get our stuff? I'm trying to figure out how I want to say this and use proper English, but are our pamphlets and stuff in the welcome and visitor centers as people come into the state? At least, the entry points closest to us, and how do we get that? How do we get those in there? I don't know how that works. When I drove through, it was closed because I was driving through at midnight. So I wasn't able to actually look, but I was kind of curious about that.
I don't believe we have any materials at the State Visitor Center. That's something that I can talk with Lori Pagliacelli about. I think the preference is given to the county DMOs. So for us, that would be the Orange County Visitors Bureau, which leads with the Visit Chapel Hill, Hillsborough and Orange County and Carrboro. So I can ask Lori about that. And it may be that they give her a certain amount of spaces, 2 or 3, and she may consider letting us use one, or we can kind of figure something out, but I'd have to talk to her office about that.
What about the train station? Speaking of trains, or they have, the Durham station has a pretty big rack of stuff there. Are we over there?
You had mentioned that, I think, in a previous meeting, and I couldn't find a way to reach out to somebody in charge of that. So I think I probably may just have to go to a physical train station and ask for some kind of a contact, because there's not really like a contact us information on the website that was readily available. But yeah, because you had said about NC by train, and they had actually, I think they had done some type of a sponsorship or had a table at a previous Visit NC conference. So I just have to figure out how to connect back up with them. Thank you, Danny, for reminding me about that.
I actually forgot I ever said that. I thought it was a brand new idea.
You already brought it up.
Glad.
Everything is the what's the twilight zone these days, I feel like. So, and I think we've met collectively, the three of us as a TDA, more than we have in recent years, I believe. So
But that goes along with what we stated in the retreat, and that I think each of us joining this board has felt, is that this board needs to actually be productive. We do have funds. We can be, and should be productive.
So can I give you an interesting statistic? So I finally got my Airbnb, all my work done, and got listed, and immediately got bookings. I'm not booked solid, I'm still welcome.
Right.
But two things. One, I had a lot of fun putting together my guidebook, my manual for guests, and it just made me want to come here and visit, because there's so much cool stuff to share with people. And the other thing is, and you, at some point, we might want to survey other Airbnb folks. They call it the 30-day views has skyrocketed. So how many people are looking for space in here? And
Really?
Yeah, when I listed this summer, it was like sort of up, and then just recently it has gone up and up and up. So there's something going on. And another thing we should bookmark for conversation is what the potential impact of Chapel Hill getting rid of short-term rentals is going to mean for hotels and Airbnbs in Hillsborough.
Yeah. I was say, because I think you're getting fall football fans. Probably it's part of the uptick.
Maybe. Yeah.
well, and what I think of is not football per se, because there's so few games in the year. A lot of them are Saturdays, and then in the afternoon, that there are some evening games. I think about basketball games, because a lot of those are in the evening. They are primetime games. People do have season tickets. They're staying over because they don't, want to leave an 9 o'clock game. Think about Duke. That's a 9 o'clock game. Usually they don't want to leave a 9 o'clock game that might get out at 11:30, midnight, depending on, how, timeouts and overtime and all that. And, do they want to drive the 2 hours to Charlotte, or the 3 hours or 4 hours to Asheville, for a ticket? So I think there's a lot of benefit to us. But I hadn't heard about anything about Chapel Hill and Airbnbs. So I'm gonna have to research that.
Yeah, I don't know where it is legislatively, but they, but that was the last conversation, was they were limiting or eliminating short-term rentals in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, they don't like them there. The hoteliers, I don't like the short-term like that. So that's been an ongoing discussion since I used to go to the Chapel Hill Orange County Visitors Bureau board meetings. I think Shannon's going to them now, right?
Yeah, that's been a conversation. I think that's just, different things are good for different communities. And I could see how it could be problematic in Chapel Hill, Carborough, and how it could, irritate the hoteliers. And I think for them too, some of it is they feel like the playing field isn't exactly fair, and they're not sure that the Airbnb is providing the, the required sanitation and the rules and things that they have to follow. So.
Yeah, I guess I see that point, but that's the same argument taxi cab drivers, make against Uber and Lyft. And, to some extent, I think that's called capitalism and innovation. So people are voting with their wallets that maybe they don't like the service or other things. And I think, in some places, and I think in Orange County in general, a lot of our hotels up until recently, they're older, and the hotel stock is just a little older. So I could see the appeal for some folks at, I happen to be meeting tonight from Raleigh, and I'm looking at the Sheraton in downtown Chapel Hill, or downtown Raleigh, that I think's been there since the 50s, right? So for some folks, they don't want to stay in a hotel like that. They might rather stay in an Airbnb. So,
Well, if you go back to, this just came to my mind, having kind of reviewed, was just looking over our notes from the retreat. And we were talking about, and because I saw Shannon's notes here, it made me think about it. So we were talking about, really marketing towards families and things, family reunions and things like that. When you do that, then people want to rent houses and be able to put, more people together in one space, or a couple of houses for a reunion, because your hotel rooms don't really accommodate, family of 5 very well at all. So if that kind of
Even
would
for
play
holiday gatherings, like I think there's a lot of opportunities that when people are traveling differently, everybody doesn't want to stay at grandma's house,
Right.
the same way
Yeah.
that they used to. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I love Airbnbs. I mean, we hardly ever do hotels.
renting those multiple hotel rooms too can be so expensive.
So expensive, and they're usually not adjoining, and
And you can't cook your breakfast, and you can,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Are we good with this item? Can we move on to our
Yes.
which is staff reports? If I need to scroll up, but I believe that's correct, right, Shannon? Staff reports.
Yes.
Yes.
So these are our numbers for March through June. I highlighted them in yellow because they're so high. I'm nervous that maybe they're not correct. I have an email into the finance department. But also I think it's entirely possible that they are correct, because we just kind of saw a pretty big boom in the spring. So I hope they're right, because they're great. But I'm still a little doubtful of numbers that look this good, especially compared to how bad it looked, July through November. So if these are correct, that's great. And, we'll definitely know with the audit where we ended at the end of FY21 as far as the revenues collected. But these numbers also look really good for, our Airbnb folks, our VRBO folks, our hotel owners. So I'm excited about that, but I'm also a little like, well, are we sure this is right? It's what's in the system.
Well, let's trust but verify, but I think that it correlates to just the activity I've seen, particularly at the Colonial Inn. And if true, then, FY21, which was July 1, 20 through June 30th of this year, was really good after we, really fell off the cliff last year. And I think it does still yet correlate a little bit that, we started compared to FY20 to be in the green more often than not. And, the Colonial Inn opened in November of last year, and with the exception of 1 month, and it was a pretty marginal amount, we have been in the green since then. I think it's undeniable the impact they've had on our tax revenues. That's for sure.
I think you're, as I recall, our situation with the bar was certainly everything was coming back online really strongly through early summer. Now, in general, all over town, it's always the case that July is slow. It's definitely been slow. And same, August hasn't been stellar. The streets are dead, surprisingly dead, on a Friday or Saturday night. So hopefully that's about, I'm guessing that's about COVID, unless it's sound ordinance. But, I will not be surprised for you to see the numbers not looking that good for July and August, but again, that's kind of normal anyway. And so maybe maybe we get past this wave, but, you know, for the variant and things will be better again.
So I have a random question, although if I thought of this before, I'll give myself credit twice. Is there a report somewhere that breaks down the amounts of the 2%? Like I know for Airbnb, you have an aggregation, but for the other properties and stuff, is there a report we could get every once in a while that tells us that?
There is, but it's not public information. It's proprietary. So I can't tell you exactly how much Colonial Inn remits in a month, because then you would know their sales.
Would there be could we see a percentage like of short-term rentals versus hotels? Like some kind of creative report? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I could do something like that, but I can't tell you exactly what they remit every month.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, I'm just curious when we're looking at, yeah. I was thinking about, oh, go ahead. Sorry, finish what you're working on.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was just going to take a note that you wanted that so that I don't forget to do it.
I just had one other random question, and maybe this is for the next meeting. The new arts festival that was announced for next year, very exciting. Is that something that we should think about participating in or being involved with in some way?
We are. The tourism board gave money towards it, and there is a standing meeting. If anybody from this group wants to join that, I'm happy to add you in. But we're having like a standing, I think it's every other Friday meeting that just started. And right now we're kind of identifying potential sites in each of the jurisdictions for the public art installations during the festival.
Cool. That's cool. No, I have no need to be involved. I was just very excited about it because it's being national. That means people will be staying here. So yeah, it's cool.
I would like to, just as an FYI, Friday is usually my least filled meeting days. So, if I have the time to log in and just listen and see what's being discussed and that kind of thing, that'd be great. Don't plan to, participate, but just kind of understand what all's going on. That would be great.
Will do. I didn't have really any other staff reports, but I did want to get your feedback on this ad that we ran in the Orange County Artists Guild. I tried to kind of tell a story and include everything. I don't know if there's any feedback. Love it, hate it, wish you would have done this differently. But so what I did was kind of be like, place to stay, food and drink, couple of things to do. I know that was some feedback from the retreat, is that we wanted our marketing to kind of tell more of a story and kind of give more of an itinerary idea. So this was just the first one that I've run for the TVA, and this was.
It looks good. Will you run it anywhere else besides the Artist Guild?
I can. I haven't put together the marketing plan for this board yet, but that's on my to-do list for the next week or two so that I can get that in front of you guys.
I like where you're going. Speaking pedantically, I would like to see in not capitalized, and Airbnb should be just a capital A, I think.
So she's right. Stay at a historic or and
I think it's an historic inn.
I think it is an historic inn, and that's not capitalized there.
Unique. But I like the mix, like the visual. Oh, look, there's cowboy boots and food and happy people and the elegant inn. I really like where you're going with it. And is it visitors with an apostrophe or visitors plural?
We've always just done visitors plural.
Okay.
But I think you'll find it across the board, because some people do visitors with an S and then the apostrophe after the S.
It's fine. I just thought as long as I was being annoying, I'd ask that one too. But I think it looks great. And I like the one you picked too for the Airbnb and the bar. I like that you got the music in there and the happy people, and it's good.
Visitor center, I think I've seen it plural, singular, possessive.
Oh yeah, there's 3 different ways.
Singular. I think there's like 4 different ways you can write visitor center. But I think it's a good one for our first one, since we've not really done a print ad. And I think we'll just continue to learn as we go along. Because obviously, I think to some extent, you know, I look at tourism board and TDA as like same, but different. We have similar missions, but our objectives are different. So I think this definitely drives, you know, at least the idea of staying over in Hillsborough, and exploring the town for a staycation or whatnot. But I will tell you, I'm amazed at the number of people I just run into. Some of them are not at all, you know, staying over, but like people who come from Cary and Greensboro and Raleigh and, you know, and I just get to talking to them. I'm like, so where are you from? And I'm expecting them to say, oh, I live over on Union Street. And they're like, well, my wife and I live in Wake Forest and we came over for a date night. I'm like, Hillsborough?
Yeah.
I know that couple. Mhm.
Yeah, we ran into them. I was with a friend at Weaver Street the other morning at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and a car pulled up and said, "Excuse me, do you know where we can go for breakfast?" and so this whole conversation ensued. Basically, no. I mean, they wanted eggs and pancakes, and you know,
Village Diner.
no, they don't do breakfast.
Oh,
Yeah.
on the weekends brunch though.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was,
Yeah.
and when they pulled out, the car, literally, I hand to God, the car behind them pulled up and said, "Were you guys just talking about breakfast? Where should we go for breakfast?" Like, where are you people from? And my friend actually stalked them. We sent them into Weaver Street ultimately for the hot bar. And she stalked them to find out that they were in Raleigh for the birth of their first grandchild out of state and didn't have anything to do that day and came over to Hillsborough in the morning. So.
My daughter-in-law is helping out at the bar as we are severely short-staffed. And so she's been pulling Saturday afternoon shifts several times. And the good thing about that is a 36-year-old woman who is, you know, personable and intelligent. I get the feedback and she's like, you guys, I mean, it's amazing on Saturday, all the visitors Hillsborough is getting. She said, you know, they're coming in. This is a great place. Never been here. You know, very positive feedback coming in on Saturday afternoon at Hot Tin Roof of all places. So just, you know, throw that out there.
First bar on the left when you come in. I mean, it's.
Are we doing board comment right now? Because if we are, there's a place for me to jump off right here. But I don't know where if staff is done.
Oh, the only thing I was going to update you on was the train station. The RFQ draft went to the town board on 9/13. And it is finalized. It's going to go out on Monday, which is 9/27, and it's going to be open for 6 weeks. So
request for quotes to build it?
For design.
For design. Okay.
And I think that we, when staff, I think specifically maybe Stephanie came to us for feedback, it was kind of like, you know, what square footage do you want? I think the options were like 7,500 or 10,000, because obviously to do an RFQ for two options is much more expensive. And ultimately you're not going to do one of them. And so I know we ended up approving putting out an RFQ for 7,500 square feet. Most of that footage will be used by the town, if I remember correctly. The only thing the station has to have are bathrooms and a waiting room, and then whatever the specifications are, and then everything else can be the town. I wanted 10,000 just because, but there's concerns about where we would get the money to build the additional 2,500 square feet. How to do math in my head. And then also, you know, could we find a purpose for it? But the good thing is that there's other out parcels that could be later used for other things as well, that we've not decided, are we going to lease it, or we're going to build it and lease it. We haven't made any of those sorts of long-term discussions or decisions about the remaining parcels of the property. So,
such as a performing arts center.
I was just going to say that.
That's been in the discussion for many years now. That'd be a great place for it.
Imagine taking the train to see a show, jumping on the train in Durham or Raleigh or Burlington or Charlotte and coming in to see a show.
Yeah.
Very cool. Fun things to be thinking about and dreaming about.
Now where are we?
I think we're on board comments now, right? Yeah.
Okay, so just a couple of things I want to throw out there for fodder here, or maybe ultimately back to the tourism board if Shannon sees fit. So what you were saying about, not finding breakfast, and, a number of our places are closing now for Mondays and Tuesdays, closing early in the afternoon, or, not only open for dinner or whatever. We've got a lot of hospitality stuff that is a lot more closed than it used to be, which of course is going to impact the tax collection as well. And, I think the main driver there is they're not able to hire enough help. It's really difficult to get help these days. And so wondering if the tourism board, and it might be better suited through the economic development people, but could we, and I think there is some rules about grants or whatever, but could we help incentivize, how you've seen in other areas that people are, like McDonald's puts up $500 signing bonus, to come to work here or whatever. Would we want to consider seeing if we could help incentivize our small local businesses somehow with, that kind of signing money after 90 days, just to help offset what they are having a hard time affording when they have reduced capacity to sell food and are trying to hire people. So just kind of throwing it out there, because if we could get Hillsborough back online and the other towns are still struggling, then look, that's an edge, it's a leg up we have for, in a competitive where we have to compete against Chapel Hill, Carver, Mebane, Durham, everybody else, but if we could really actually be open for business, that would be cool. And Matt, I hope you're going to talk about the governor's thing, because I think that's another way to set Hillsborough apart from surrounding communities. He's like, what are you talking about? The social.
Now, yeah, it's what Shannon and I talked about, and it's something I was going to bring up for us to maybe talk about at the tourism board meeting. But the social districts that allow for people to, for districts in towns in North Carolina to essentially function like other cities in the South, whether I think it's like New Orleans or Savannah and Charleston, where you can, have an open container as you're going down the street. Maybe you're visiting one restaurant and you take your beer and you're going to the next one where you have your reservation, or, maybe you're doing some shopping or something. I think, we need to look at some different communities that are probably not, I don't think there's a lot of cities that are about our size that would even consider it. I think we'd be looking at still larger municipalities, but Cary, Apex, Holly Springs, Wake Forest, those come to mind. Pittsburgh, maybe. Obviously, Chapel and Carver are different because they're so close to the university, but I think there might be a new sound ordinance issue coming up as well. And so 2 controversial ordinance changes might be a lot at one time, but I think that's something that will probably need a slow walk a lot, just because it's so new and who out there is even thinking about it. But that would be also a very interesting kind of thing. But I have all kinds of questions, like how do you delineate where the district starts and stops, and does it go across the street, and how do you police it? Not in terms of like police, but also in terms of police. So it'll be interesting. How wide do we have to extend the district? Do we have? I have a lot of questions on how we could implement it, but I think that would be a good discussion for us to have.
Well, it would be another way to set Hillsborough apart, which again, we've got, we do compete for the tourist traffic with these other surrounding areas. Everybody's trying to draw people to their community. So it'd be, I think it's worth examining because it does give an opportunity that probably Chapel Hill and Carver are not going to be able to take, for us to be a little bit different and, to actually have, last Friday's is great, but you could more routinely have that kind of up and down the street, enjoying galleries and carrying your glass of wine with you or whatever. So I just mention it here because I'm just sort of thinking about same thing with getting some help for these businesses to hire people. I don't know where the opportunities are or if there are any for the tourism board to help hospitality in this way. But it's a real problem.
I just want to say from the, well, I don't want to say front lines because it's my clients who are on the front lines, not me, but working with people who are cutting back and literally on fire every day working on this with them for staffing. I think that's a wonderful idea, and it makes me wonder, but it never occurred to me. So look at you, the Chamber of Commerce lady, thinking so. That's a great idea. What about if it looked like a matching grant program? What if it looked like a business saying, I'm going to pick, because I just proposed this to somebody yesterday, offering a bonus that looks like, if you stay 30 days, you get $50. If you stay 3 months, you get $150. If you stay 6 months, it's $1,000. I don't know what it is, like some insane, because I know once you're there for 6 months, you're going to do a good job, and I want you to do a good job. So what if we looked at longevity bonuses that are matching grants? And so we wouldn't lose any money if they don't pay them out. But if they do pay them out, they've got skin in the game, and when we're doubling their money.
So 100% agree. Like, let's match it up with what the employer would be willing to put up, but it makes it more substantial with that match, that otherwise they can only afford 200 and all of a sudden it's 400 or whatever. I don't know. I do think the criteria of you having to stay a certain number of days has to be in there, or you'll just turn and burn through a bunch of people. So
100%.
I don't think legally
I was going to be.
we can do that. So I think it's a really good idea. But basically the Constitution of North Carolina doesn't allow us to give public funds to private entities unless there's some public purpose or public benefit. And so whichever way we do this, we'd have to make sure it was very legally defensible. And even with the ARPA money, economic developers are struggling to figure out how to funnel some of the ARPA money to private industry because of that provision. Because basically the government can't give businesses money is the long and the short of it,
right.
Except for in very specific circumstances.
Can they give it to private citizens? Can they give it to the employee, not to the business?
Maybe. I mean, there's people who are currently exploring how to get around that. With the tourism money, I think it's even more restricted. But it is something that we could potentially look at if we were able to use some of the ARPA money. And I think right now, the town manager is looking at making a recommendation to use a majority of that money towards infrastructure, water and sewer infrastructure projects. But it's something that we could definitely look at. And I can see if anybody else has found a loophole or a way to do it legally.
What if it was something that we partnered with the EDC that was, because I know they've done programs like this in the past where they had awards for businesses for certain, I want to say there was a food safety award at some point. Maybe if there was, and I don't know how you would measure that, right? But somebody who figured out an innovative program and ways to keep and retain people. The other thing I want to throw out there, and we don't have time to really dig into it, but I'll just tell you, I'm working with one of my clients to hire guys on work release from the prison, which was before COVID, a very robust program, very successful program. The town's got experience with this. I've got experience with it for 20 years. And this single thing that is keeping them from putting guys to work right now is the lack of transportation. There are no contractors who are willing to go into the program and provide transportation. And so if anybody wants to talk to me offline about that, that is a logjam of putting people to work in good jobs who are qualified to do them. And I could tell you 100 stories that would make you feel good about getting them started in good jobs. They are a willing and trained, for the most part, workforce that we're not able to put to work because we don't have transportation for them.
And some of the service industry.
Yeah, yeah. Some of them come from my cook school, and I've written them letters of reference. They're ServSafe certified. They're ready to get to work. They will work for very low entry wages. Not that I'm advocating for that, but it is a big logjam that we could clear if we're being creative.
That's interesting to think about. And back to the other thing, could we give money to the Economic Development Department for a hospitality grant program, hospitality hiring grant program, something like that? Could we do that to give it, because they are not, they're government, not for profit, whatever. I mean, is that something we could explore? Because
Could we get the opinion of sorry, long day, brains fried, Bob, Shannon, on some of the things, like just some of the ideas that are being generated? Because I do, what my concern was not even the Constitution, just that, we collect the funds from certain entities for a certain purpose. And, I think the quickest way for us to lose this tax and this program would be people in the General Assembly thinking we're not doing what we're supposed to do with it too. So I think we need to make sure that, whatever, if we're going to get creative, we can get creative, but that it is legally, not just legally defensible, it's politically defensible.
Could we do something that's not cash? Could we do, like, I'm just thinking about what, it's, I don't know what it translates to, but it's really nice that Uniquitiques and Village Diner are called out yonder, or called out on that. Could we do something that is a cross promotion, kind of like what you do with the chamber, like with levels of service, right? You have,
yeah, so maybe you can, we can offer some sort of visibility for the business that is, but I don't know.
I'll think
I
about
can
it.
think about that.
Great,
That's interesting to think about for sure.
but I hear what you're saying, Matt, and it's absolutely, that's why Shannon's here, to keep us on the rails.
Right, absolutely. And
I'll let you do whatever you want as long as it's legal.
Are your people through your program, are they in Hillsborough or are they elsewhere?
The work release?
Yeah.
The prisons here in Hillsborough, there's 200 people over there, many of them who are eligible for work release and ready to go.
But they can't get transportation from their homes, I guess, into town. Is that it?
From the prison. This is work release. This is this is work release.
Oh, okay.
When my grandma was a correctional case manager there, it was tough to get transportation if the employer couldn't provide it. I mean, she was constantly working with cab companies and all kinds of
I have some history with her.
Yeah, so,
I can tell you some tales of cab companies who were booted out of town over this because they were taking advantage of the work release guys. So I've got stories in history and I'm happy to share it. But what we have over there is a warden who is committed to programming and education and high quality jobs for these guys. And we have the local reentry council, which is working to make these connections too for post release. So just something we haven't talked about, but that's what I do. So if we want to talk about it later, I'm happy to offline.
So to your point, we couldn't give money directly to a business to give a bonus, but maybe we could talk more offline about funding transportation to a number of different businesses through that program or something.
Yeah,
to support tourism and support our food and beverage industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He said thumbs up.
okay. Well, is there anything else for the good of the order?
I just want to know, I'm sorry, maybe I've lost track of it. What happened with our vision and mission?
We didn't get there yet.
I know you sent out some wonderful, like basically this is how you do it with your businesses, the outline of how to get it done. And then I didn't know, are we supposed to put it back on an agenda and do it? Or is that a separate meeting? Okay. All right. I just thought maybe I missed, a lot going on. So, okay.
A lot going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing it. We just haven't put it into words.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. All right, that's all I have. I have my little, I had a whole list here.
Great. Well, if there is a motion to adjourn at 7:01, that would be in order.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And the motion passes and we're adjourned.
Yay.